Hey friends, welcome to Osaka, even though I might be in Taiwan by the time you watch this video. And I have a flight to catch to go to the northern part of Japan in a few hours. But I thought I'd make this video because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, a Japanese friend of mine, and I said, hey, you want to come to a jam session with me? And he said, no, I don't dare because the Japanese gypsy jazz community is scary, is what he told me. Now, this guy is a really, really, really good musician, like someone I really respect as a musician, and he could easily participate, in a gypsy jazz jam and sound really good. In my opinion, a lot better than a lot of people, but he doesn't dare because of some comments that he's received in the past that he's not playing the right guitar, maybe not using the right technique. I didn't witness this. It's what he told me, but I've heard other stories like this. Here's the thing. I love Japan. I love being here. There's so much to love. But I realize that in the music community, Japanese love to use Twitter. Apparently now it's called X. I've never used Twitter. But apparently jazz musicians or musicians tear each other on Twitter. They go, like, they argue with each other about who's the most authentic musician. And it got me thinking a lot, especially in the context of gypsy jazz. Because I love Japan, but you have to understand that Japanese mentality, East Asian, but more specifically Japanese mentality, is quite the opposite of a lot of Western ways of thinking, culture, mannerisms. And I'm the kind of person who tends to believe that a style is not just defined by the scales, notes, whatever vocabulary. It's also defined by the culture, the everything, the way you speak, the way you live your life, the way you think about life. And of course, in the West, there are so many ways of thinking. In Japan, of course, everyone's their own individual person, of course, but you see more unity than you do elsewhere, if that makes sense. And case in point, when I talk to my Japanese friends about my studying Japanese, they ask me, what's the hardest part about learning Japanese? If you think about it, every language is the same in terms, like, if you're going to be learning let's say I don't speak English. If I have to learn English, well, vocabulary is going to be hard. Grammar is going to be hard because I'm not used to the language. So in that sense, every language is kind of the same. But what is especially difficult for me in Japanese is the way you completely have to shift your way of thinking. It totally, the culture of Japanese is so deeply tied to the way the language works. They go hand in hand together. So that's what I said. I said it's not enough to just study the grammar and vocabulary. You have to learn to speak in the Japanese way is an art of its own, and it is true. Any Japanese person will tell you this, and my friends would tell me, "You're right, and that's what you have to do." And so it is also with music. When I play gypsy jazz and I wanna play in the quote unquote the Sinti gypsy style that I know very well, I have to kind of channel that culture, a culture, if I may say, that I know very, very, very well. I know the traditions. I know a little bit of the language, the way of thinking. So there was this movie that was made in 2003 or 4. It was filmed then, and I managed to get a copy of it because you can't find it anymore. I think the guy who made the video doesn't want it on the internet because apparently he's gone. I don't know if it's true, but some people are after him if he ever showed up in those communities again. He did a video in very, very bad faith, kind of to mock gypsy jazz musicians, but he goes pretty far. And some of the stuff that he does in that documentary, it's called Django Mania, by the way. I have a copy of it, but I don't know if I should post it online. But it's very, very mean spirited. But there are certain valid points that he makes. So basically, it's a documentary that makes fun of gypsy jazz musicians. And he actually travels to Japan to make fun of Japanese gypsy jazz musicians. It's kind of sad. And I think the musicians themselves are not realizing that they're being made fun of. And what he eventually gets the Japanese to admit is that he says, so you're saying in Japan, gypsy jazz music is great, but gypsies are not welcome in Japan. He kind of traps the Japanese musicians and say that And now that I live here and I know Japanese culture quite well, I can kind of see that. And that to me is kind of strange and a little bit troublesome, just because the way I play gypsy jazz is highly, highly influenced by my experiences with the gypsy community. And I know that in Japan, some people try to explain gypsy jazz. A lot of people don't know what gypsy jazz is, to be honest. They don't know the distinction between Django, gypsy jazz, swing, or they use words kind of loosely. And one person, for example, would say, "Oh, gypsy jazz doesn't even exist. It's just a way of playing jazz. It's just jazz music with just a few little difference." Well, first of all, I want to say that music is music. It's either good or it's not good. And if it's good, that's really all that matters. But I would counter to say that there is such a thing as gypsy jazz, the way a lot of gypsies play this style of music. Because until kind of recently, maybe 20 years, for the most part, it was gypsy musicians playing this kind of music. And they have a distinct way of playing it. So much that when I listen to recordings blindfolded, I can tell, this is a gypsy group, this is a gypsy musician, because they have certain mannerisms, certain things that they do that goes beyond just the lines. The lines themselves do play a factor, but it's a sound, it's a way of playing rhythm, it's a way of doing things which I can talk about at length. You should watch my Gypsy Jazz history documentary that I released maybe 2 years ago. It's like 2 hours long. I talk about that. So there is such a thing if you know how to hear the accent. And being able to hear the accent is the key, which a lot of people are not able to. And it makes sense. When I first came to Japan, like I remember I was watching like a Japanese show, and the Japanese friend said, "Oh, you can hear that's the typical Kansai accent." At that time, I was like, "What?" It all sounds the same to me. There's this YouTuber, an American guy who speaks fluent Japanese, and apparently his specialty is intonation, because Japanese, one of the difficult things of the Japanese language, in my opinion, is the intonation. The way you intonate the words can change the meaning. For example, and the intonation changes from region to region, but in the standard Tokyo dialect, for example, you say ame, that means rain. But if you say ame, that means candy. So ame, ame. Just changing the intonation changes the meaning of the word. So there's an American YouTuber who specializes in this, and he made a video to make fun of people who were not good at intonation. And when I first watched that video, I couldn't hear any difference, because at that time I was a beginner in Japanese. I didn't know any better, and I personally I still think I'm a beginner. But now that I rewatch the same video, it's like, oh, okay, that's what it is. My point is, how can you know what you don't know, what you have not experienced, what you don't have experience with? And it's very funny, because also very recently, a Japanese friend of mine, not a musician, she showed me a YouTube video of a Japanese guy speaking English, but imitating the accents of different cultures. So one thing about me growing up in North America and working all over the world with different cultures, usually often speaking English, I've heard people speak English with a French accent, English with all the different English accents, English with a Russian accent, English with a German accent, English with an African accent, Indian accent, etc., etc. I've heard them all. So in this video of the Japanese guy, he's imitating all these different cultures. And my friend was telling me, wow, isn't this guy so amazing? He's totally nailed the accents. And me, being super familiar with all these accents, I was like, so nodded. Particularly the way he was imitating the French accent was so bad. It was really, really bad. And if you look at the comments in Japanese, a lot of them are saying, wow, you're so good, you're so good. So they're judging someone, but they don't have a standard from which they can judge. They can only believe what the person says. So if I tell you that I'm good at speaking Japanese, you can only believe me, right? The only way you can test it out is if you ask another Japanese person to speak to me. Then you'll find out that actually, I have a certain level of fluency, but I really don't consider myself good at Japanese yet. Hopefully one day. But when it comes to gypsy jazz, this is the thing that I like immersed myself so very deeply for so long with the community. And I would even dare say that I'm one of the few non-gypsies who has contact with the wider, how do you say, the wider Sinti community. I have Sinti friends in Italy, in France, all over Germany, all over the Netherlands, etc. Usually, when there's a person like me, like a non-gypsy, haklo, they say, um, who has connection with the Sinti community, often it's in that region, like a French haklo, non-gypsy. You might be wondering, haklo in Gajo. Gajo is also non-gypsy, but also it has another meaning. It means peasant. Some gypsies say it's not pejorative, but sometimes I feel it is a little bit pejorative, like Dikko Gajo, like look at that non-gypsy. Baraklo is also the same meaning, but it just means non-gypsy. Gajo has that other meaning of peasant. Kind of like in Japanese, they say gaijin, like gai is outside, jin, person. And for some people, it's kind of pejorative. But then you have another word, which actually it's the same word, but you add another one, gai kokujin, a person from another country. That's a little bit more acceptable. It's very acceptable, gai kokujin. Because I have a certain knowledge of the Sinti language, I can communicate with a lot of them. Not saying that I can speak it well, but I have a certain level of Romanes. So this is the reason why I'm making this video. If you watch the beginning video, I'm playing with the wrong technique. I play not with the floating wrist. I'm alternately picking, and I'm also playing here, which is, to be honest, it's not the sound that I would go for. Unfortunately, this is the only acoustic guitar that I have right now. I wish I had like some cheap folk guitar, and I would have played on that. But you see, I played with the quote-unquote wrong technique. And also, by choice, I played with a sound that I wouldn't have used in this particular situation, the way that I was playing. But if you listen to it, does it sound bad to your ears? I used all the tricks, not the tricks, but I think I was playing very much in that style. Whereas you have these people who play with all the right gear, the right pick, everything, the quote-unquote right technique, they don't sound in the style. So to sound in the style, it is here. Oh, your heart. It is a state of mind. It is the way you approach the music. And then all the other things, they're secondary. If I played with kind of the sound that I wanted, first of all, instead of playing here, if I played here, that would already be a lot better. But I chose to do it here just to take off some points. But here, if I play a Django solo, see, the wrong technique, but playing around here, I get closer to the sound. But then there's some people who play with the right technique, even the right notes, but they don't sound in the style because they don't have the inflection, the time feel, and everything. So really all this to say, whatever technique you use, so all this to say, music is music. You have to understand that in the days before these guitars were mass produced in Asia, a lot of Sinti musicians could not afford a guitar like this. Some did not even own their own guitar. I remember I was speaking to one of Django's descendants from Luson's family. It was not Simba. Simba was just a baby then. I talked to one of his brothers or something, stepbrothers, I don't know. And I asked him, we were playing together in Samoa. And then one day, the next day, he showed up with our guitar. It's like, hey, where's your guitar? And he told me, I don't own a guitar. Well, what was that guitar you were playing yesterday? Oh, I borrowed it from one of my cousins. So, and I remember the first time I met Paulo Schaefer, he did not own a guitar like this. He had these cheap archtop, no-name brand archtop guitars that he was playing on. He was playing acoustic. But he had the sound, despite playing on the wrong guitar. That's part of the gypsy style. It's, you make do with what you have. and everything has to come from here. And here it's even a wrong pick. What is this? 1 millimeter. I use this for electric guitar normally, but here I played an acoustic guitar with it. I wish I had the wrong guitar too, just to demonstrate this. But again, food for thought. Gear and all that, of course, it's great. But the music comes first. And if you're gonna start arguing about who's authentic, who's not real, and everything, just be careful about going in that direction. Make sure you kind of know what you're talking about, which most people don't. There really is a Gypsy accent. I wouldn't say it's the best one. There is no best one. But I would say that it's an accent that I really, really love. In the Gypsy community, you have these players like Mike Reinhardt, who don't really play Gypsy jazz, who play more electric guitar bebop, but they also have a Gypsy accent in the way they play bebop. So that's some food for thought. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of looking at life. And unless you immerse in that culture, it's hard to understand. So anyway, we're talking about that technique, right? Playing with the wrong technique. In case you don't know, I have a book on Gypsy jazz picking technique. So you can check that out on Amazon. It has a lot of 5-star reviews and 1 3-star review. I don't know why. Oh well. If you bought the book and you liked it, it would really help me a lot if you left a nice review. Thank you so much. That's what I want to say today. I guess it was another philosophical video, but I really would like people to start really thinking deeply and logically and to understand the history and the culture. Because everyone else is making these videos on what scales and which arpeggios to play. It's all fine and dandy, but I want to go a little bit deeper. Thank you.